Number 6 on page 450 wants us to convert this data into separate columns so that we have the company name, the address, city, state, zip, and phone number in 6 separate columns. They give us a hint and say use the convert text to columns twice, and we'll see why we need to do that. Let's just try it with this first one. Right here on the Data tab, text to columns. I'm just going to do it with this first one. And it says, is this text delimited or fixed with? In other words, if it were fixed with, that would mean the first 12 characters are the company, the next 20 characters are the address, the next 15 characters are the city. Sometimes when you're getting data out of a mainframe, that's how it will do it, and it will just fill in blanks, fill in spaces for the rest of it if it's not that long. Delimited means characters such as commas or tabs separate each field, and that's what we want because we've got commas separating each field except for this state and zip, but we'll straighten that out on the second one. So notice when we say delimited, now it asks us what character do you want to split the columns on? And in this case, it's not a tab. You need to make sure to uncheck that. It's a comma, isn't it? And notice when it sees that we want a comma, it says, oh, I think you want to draw your lines this way, wherever the commas are. And notice everything is in a separate column except for state and zip. They are together because there's no comma in between them. That's exactly what we want. And now if we click next, it gives us the option to do anything we want to these individual columns, including don't include them in the split. But we want every column in the split. So let's finish. And notice it left the first thing in the first column. It put this here, this here, this here, this here. Now, let's look at that again. Text to columns, delimited, comma. Notice what happens when you look at this. It looks like there's a space at the end of everything, doesn't it? But they're just putting that there in place of where the comma was. There's not really a space there. Now here in California, there really is a space before CA and after CA. Let's examine that. Notice if I double click here, it goes right to the end of that. There's no space after that. If I double click here, let's stretch these out. If I double click here, there's no space. Double click here, there's no space. But if I double click here and press the home key, it takes me to the beginning, and if I arrow right, there is a space there, isn't there? Because it was after the comma that we had put in when we separated it. So we're going to need to separate those things into 2 columns. But we have to be careful because if we say split this into 2 columns, this 90089 will overwrite our phone number. So let's do all the rows first, and then we'll move this column over so it doesn't get deleted or overwritten. Okay, so I'm going to select all the rest of these rows, Control Shift arrow down. Now I'm going to do text to columns, delimited, comma, yep, finish. And now we've got everything separated where there must be some long name of some retailer, so I'm going to squeeze that up because I don't want to see all that. And then here are our columns, some long cities, it looks like, some long addresses. We don't see them here, but they must be further down the list. Now let's go back up to the top and we say, okay, this is exactly what we want, isn't it? Except for that state and zip. We want to separate that, and we want to get rid of that space first. So let's move this column over. Actually, let's insert several columns in front of it. I'm going to select this column and say right click, insert. It inserts one column. If I do it again, I could just repeat the last thing I did, which is the F4 key, function 4. That repeats it, inserts another column. I'm going to do 3 columns there just to be safe. Now, first we want to get rid of the spaces that are prior to California. There's nothing after the zip, but we might as well use the trim function on it. So I'm going to say equals trim of that thing. And so it's going to trim any trailing or leading spaces from that. Make that a little bigger so we can see it more easily. So there's the trimmed version of it. I'm going to copy that formula down by double clicking on the fill box, and now I'm going to take these and replace these with them. This is a formula. I'm going to replace it here but paste it as values so that it's not depending on anything. So I'm going to select all these. I'm going to copy them. I'm going to arrow left, and that'll put me at the top of that column. I'm going to paste as values, paste special, or I can just click on this because that's values, but I could bring up the paste special box and paste it as values. Same thing. And now, if I look at this, there are no trailing spaces, there are no leading spaces, and that's what I want. So I no longer need this column. So I'm going to delete this column, or actually I'll just press the delete key and erase everything. So now I still have that blank column and I've got this the way I want. Notice now it's a 2-letter state abbreviation. I can split that into 2 columns. What would be my delimiting character? What is separating the state from the zip? It is a space character, isn't it? So I can repeat the process I just did. I can select all this and say I want to do text to columns. It's delimited, but this time it's not a comma, because notice if it were a comma you'd only have one column. But if I take off the comma and say it's a space, it says, oh, okay, that's what you want, huh? Okay. So now we're going to finish, and it separates the zip from the state, and notice because the zip is now a number, it's right justified. When it was part of this, it was all just text. But now that's a number, it's right justified, there are no leading or trailing spaces. Here there are no leading or trailing spaces. So I think we are absolutely good, except now we've got these 2 extra columns, and instead of right-clicking and doing delete, I'm going to do my little keyboard shortcut, Control -, and that deletes those columns. Number 7 says correct any errors in the data that were introduced during the conversion. We sure don't want to scroll through 2,000 records. That might only take 4 or 5 minutes, but if we had 200,000 records, it would take a whole long time. So what we want to do is we want to say, you know, I believe that everything in this column should be 10 digits plus 2 hyphens. Everything here should be 5 digits. Everything here should be 2 letters. So if I double click on this column border, this should shrink down to only show me 2 letters. And when I double click on it, it does not shrink. So there's something that's this wide in that column, so something's wrong. Same here. If I double click on this, oh, that column looks good. There's nothing wider than that. How about this column? That column looks good. There's nothing wider than that. So here's what I would suggest. There shouldn't be anything in any of these columns, G, H, or I. I'm going to click in I1, and I'm going to control arrow down. And if there's nothing in that column, it should take me all the way down to row 1,000,000 something. Control arrow down, there I am at the very last row of the spreadsheet. So far, so good. Control arrow up, I'm back at row 1. Now I'm going to do the same thing in column H. Nothing in column H. Back to the top. Column G, control arrow down. Oh, control arrow down again. Control arrow down again. Control arrow down again. There's several things there, aren't there? Well, I don't want to be control arrow downing. Why don't I sort by that column and all of those will come to the top? Okay, so let us sort this by column G. I'm going to sort by column G. I think I want Z to A, but let's see what happens. If I do Z to A, all my stuff comes to the top and the blanks are below that. That's what I want. So there are my bad records that have to be corrected. Just to double check, I'm going to click here and control arrow down and make sure there's nothing else below. Control arrow down all the way to row 1,000,000. So these are my bad records. We have to correct them, and let's see why did they mess up. We separated by commas, didn't we? Notice incorporated, typically it would be bases loaded, comma, incorporated. And so it split that into a separate column. We didn't intend that to happen because we didn't notice any of the vendors had commas in the name of the company, but they do. Same here. Red, white, and blue sports items in a series, they had a comma after red. So really all we need to do is concatenate these two things back together in these rows, don't we? Now this is so small that we could just do it by hand, but we might have 2,000 that are like this, so let's do it the way that you could do any that you want. You write one formula and you're done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a column here so I can put a formula in it. So there's a column, and I'm going to say take this thing, concatenate it, ampersand, with a comma. That's how it used to be. Actually a comma and a space. Comma, space, and then put this thing after it. So this should say bases loaded, comma, space, incorporated. And when I press enter, that's exactly what it says. Bases loaded, comma, incorporated. So there is our formula, and we don't want to copy it all the way down because we only want to do it on these 10 rows. So I'm going to just drag it down. Whoops, I need the formula, don't I? So we've got Body Temple incorporated. We've got Athletic Goods incorporated. You know what? There was already a space here, wasn't there? Because it's separated on the comma and it included the space here. So I really don't need that space. So I'm going to take that space out and just say concatenate A1 with C1. Oh wait, we need the comma, but not the space. There we go. So all I did was take out the space between the quote marks. So it looks like this is the correct name for our vendors. And what do I want to do? I want to take this and replace it over here. So I want to copy this and paste it as values here. Another way you can do this, you may recall that if you drag something with the left arrow, it simply moves it. It's the same as cut and paste. If you grab something and drag it with the left arrow, it's the same as cut and paste. But if you grab it with the right mouse click and start to move it, whenever you do something with the right mouse click, it will give you options. So I'm going to move this on top of those other ones, let go of my right mouse button, and it says, did you want to move it here? That's normally what you'd want to do. Did you want to copy it here? No, I wanted to copy it here as values only. So I'm going to click that, and now this is exactly what I want here. And it is hard-coded in. Notice this formula still takes whatever's here, puts a comma after it, and then concatenates whatever's here. So this stuff we don't want anymore, do we? Not at all. In fact, we don't even want this column. We don't want this column at all because we've already got the good names. So I'm going to right-click on the column and delete it. Now, what do I want? Everything from here down is good. Let me make that a little smaller so we can see what we're doing. See all the columns at once. Basically, we simply need to move all this stuff one column to the left, don't we? Get rid of this. So, a way that we can do that, first of all, I could just get rid of this. I'm going to select it and hit delete. That clears the contents. Now I'm just going to select this, Control Shift arrow right, and now I have selected everything I want, and now I just need to move it over one column. So I'm just going to grab any edge that has the arrow, the white mouse arrow with the 4 directional black arrows, and drag it one column to the left. And what happened here? Oh, Rosa Hills, Woodland Hills, California. We separated the city. Looks like we have a little more cleanup to do, don't we? We had stuff over there. Santa Rosa, that's the name of the city, isn't it? Okay. We could do formulas, but I think I'm just going to type that in there. I'm just going to say that's Santa Rosa, and this is Woodland Hills. Notice how it filled in that Santa Rosa because there must be another Santa Rosa somewhere in that column. So now that's good. Now I need these states to be here, don't I? Okay. Now we're going to do something really slick. We're going to say, give me some characters off the left, returns the specified number of characters from the start of a text string. But I don't have to start at the beginning, do I? I could say, give me 2 characters, but don't start at the beginning. I'm sorry, the text is this. Okay, I do have to start at the beginning with the left function. There is a mid function that lets you start anywhere. I think I'm going to use that because you need to know about that. The mid function says returns the characters from the middle of a text string. You can give it any starting position and any length. So I want to get something from this text string. Where do I want to start? I want to start at position 2, don't I? And how many characters do I want? I want 2 characters, but don't start at the beginning. That'll give me a space and a letter. Start at position 2 and give me 2 characters. So that gives me California, but not the space. So if I pull that down, now I've got that. And now I want to copy it and paste it as values here. Here's a little trick. I'm going to right-click and drag it, but put it right back on top of itself. And let go and say copy here as values only. So now it has replaced itself with just the values. It looks like we have one more thing to clean up. That is, we need just this zip code, don't we? So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to insert a column here. I'm going to use that mid function. I could say start on position 5 and give me 5. Actually, since I just want the last 5, do I have a space after that? No. I just want the last 5, don't I? I could use the mid function again. In fact, the left and the right functions are just convenient versions of the mid function that start at the first character. So I'm going to say equals right of that. How many characters do I want off the right hand end? Zip code, 5 characters. So I want 5 characters. There's my zip. Now notice that looks like a number, doesn't it? Why is it left justified? Because it's not actually a number. This is a text function. It is treating that as a chunk of text. But as soon as I copy it and paste it in the same place as values, now it says the number in this cell is formatted as text, and we would want to format it as a number. Convert all these to actual numbers, and now they will go to the right. And again, we want to take that and just replace this with it. There's data here already. Do you want to replace it? Yep. And now we're good there. This whole column should be empty, all the way down, all the way up. Right click, delete. I think we're good now, but we don't know for sure. Let's select these columns and auto size them and see if they shrink to 2 characters and 5 characters. So if I auto size these and make sure this doesn't get wider, if I auto size it, it does what I think it should do. That doesn't guarantee that there are no more mistakes, but that's a pretty good indication that these columns are good. Number 8 says add a header row with labels to describe the data in each column. So we want to insert a row here. I'm going to select row 1 and do our little shortcut Control plus, and now we've got an extra row 1. We want to put column headings on here. This would be the company, wouldn't it? Company. This would be the address. This would be the city, state, zip, and phone. Now, because this is all text, Excel is not going to know for sure whether these are headers or not. If everything below it were numbers, it would know. So it's often good to make your headers look different from the rest of the text. So I'm going to make them italics and bold and center them. And that will probably let Excel assume that they are headings of those columns. Number 9 says change the data in the worksheet to an Excel table. A table, as you recall, does some things for us automatically. It does a lot of very nice things. One of the major disadvantages of a table is you cannot do subtotals when the data is in a table. You have to convert it back to an ordinary range. But we're not going to be doing subtotals. So to turn this into a table, we insert table, and notice it says, because I clicked inside my list, it said, I think you're talking about A1 all the way down to row 1994, since we added the headings. And notice it assumes now my table has headings, and it goes from column A to column F. I say, yeah, that's exactly what I want. So we say OK. It converts it to a table, And some of those things that are nice with a table is it automatically alternates the row colors. If we add a row or delete a row, it still alternates the colors, which would not happen in an ordinary range. Now you'd have two in a row that were the same. I'm going to undo that. Another thing it does is it automatically puts our filter buttons on here. Of course, we can do the same thing with data filter, but notice how these things are grayed out. See, the filter is already on it now. So there are a lot of things that this can do, but now it is a table. If for some reason we wanted to do subtotals on this, we would have to go in the table design and say convert this table back to a range. And it would look the same, but it would not be treated the same. Also, we can make it look a lot of different styles. We can put a totals row at the bottom and have it average each column or count each column. So there are a lot of nice things that a table does for you automatically. What does it want us to do? Number 10, it says sort the data by state, then by city, then by company. So we want all our states together, then alphabetical by city, then within each city, alphabetical by company. So I can go under data, sort. So we're sorting first by state, then by city, and finally by company. And those are all alphabetical, ascending, A to Z. So let's see if it works. Our first state is Alaska, AK. After that it's California. There's probably a ton of those. After California, it goes to Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington. So it looks like those are in alphabetical order. Within Alaska, all the Anchorages are together. Then by each city, the Fairbanks are together. And whenever there are duplicates, here's more than 4 in Juneau. These should be in alphabetical order by the name of the company. So here are the 4 in Juneau, and they are alphabetized by company. So it looks like our sort is working the way we want it to. Number 11 says, filter the results to display only those companies in Oregon and show the total number of companies in the state. So we want to filter by state. So if I click on this, it's already sorted, but notice I can select every state, which is what it is now, or I can pick one or more states. Well, if I'm only picking one, it would probably be faster to deselect everything and then just select that one, especially if there were 30 of these. So I'm going to deselect everything and then select just Oregon. I could select Oregon and California, or Oregon and Washington. There's Oregon, there's Washington, but I don't want that. So I just want Oregon. Just as a reminder, when you filter, I'm going to do Oregon. There are several things that alert you to the fact that you're filtered. Number 1, there's a filter icon on that arrow button. Number 2, in the status bar at the bottom it says you have 69 of 1,993 records found. So we're not seeing all the records. Another thing it does for us is it turns the row numbers blue instead of black, meaning that you're not seeing all the rows. And oftentimes these will not be in sequential order because you're missing some of the things in between. Because we sorted it first, these are sequential, but oftentimes they will not. So here's Oregon, and they want to know how many companies are in that state. Well, we could count them, couldn't we? Actually, the status bar tells us, doesn't it? It says there are 69. But here's what we can do. Under the table design, we can say, give me a total row at the bottom. And so if we go down to the bottom, it has added a total row, and notice it automatically chose the last column. It automatically chose the count. And the reason it chose the count, it knows that those are text, and it says, I can't average those, I can't sum those together, that's just text. So it automatically chose count. But if we were in a place that had numbers, then it would allow us to sum those. 7 times 10 to the 6th, that's a big number. We don't care what the sum or the average of the zip codes are. That's why, even though they're numbers, we really do treat them as text, but there should be the same number of those. So that's what a totals row can do for you.